The Vanishing Room, the Grand Arcadia Hotel, was the epitome of luxury and elegance. Located in the heart of the city, it attracted wealthy travelers and dignitaries from all over the world. Its latest addition was a newly built suite, Room 713, which promised an experience like no other. However, the room had quickly gained a notorious reputation. Every night at midnight, Room 713 vanished, along with any guests staying in it. The hotel management was baffled. Guests would check in, but by morning, there would be no trace of them or the room. Panicked and desperate to avoid a scandal, the management hired Detective Mark Harris, a seasoned investigator with a knack for solving unusual cases. Mark arrived at the hotel on a stormy evening. The manager, Mr. Thompson, briefed him on the situation as they rode the elevator to the 7th floor. "Detective, we've had 3 disappearances in the past month," Mr. Thompson said, his voice trembling. "We can't afford another. Please, find out what's happening." Mark nodded, his curiosity piqued. He had dealt with strange cases before, but a vanishing room was a first. He entered Room 713 and inspected it carefully. It was opulent, with plush furnishings, elegant decor, and a panoramic view of the city. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At 11:30 p.m., Mark settled into the armchair, determined to stay awake and vigilant. As the minutes ticked by, a sense of unease settled over him. The air grew colder, and an oppressive silence filled the room. At exactly midnight, the lights flickered, and the room began to shudder. Suddenly, the walls seemed to dissolve into darkness, and Mark found himself in an endless void. He could hear distant whispers, growing louder and more insistent. The whispers spoke of betrayal, revenge, and eternal torment. "Who's there?" Mark called out, his voice echoing in the void. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman in an old-fashioned dress, her eyes filled with sorrow and anger. She introduced herself as Eleanor, the original owner of the land where the hotel now stood. "This place was once my home," Eleanor said, her voice ethereal. "I was betrayed by those I trusted, murdered in cold blood, and my spirit was bound to this land." Mark listened, his heart pounding. Eleanor explained that she had cursed the land and any building that stood on it. Room 713 was the focal point of her wrath, a gateway to her torment. "Why take the guests?" Mark asked, trying to remain calm. "They are trapped in my eternal nightmare, sharing my suffering," Eleanor replied. "But you, detective, you can break the curse." Eleanor handed Mark a locket containing a portrait of her and the man who betrayed her. She instructed him to bury it beneath the hotel, in the exact spot where she was killed. The void began to close in, and Mark felt himself being pulled back. He awoke in Room 713, the morning light streaming through the windows. The room was intact, and he was alone. Determined to end the nightmare, Mark followed Eleanor's instructions. With Mr. Thompson's help, Mark located the exact spot beneath the hotel. He dug into the ground and buried the locket, saying a prayer for Eleanor's soul. As he finished, a sense of peace washed over him, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. That night, Room 713 did not vanish. The guests stayed safely, and the whispers ceased. The curse seemed broken, and Eleanor's spirit was finally at rest. Relieved, Mark decided to spend one last night in Room 713 to ensure everything was truly resolved. He felt a sense of accomplishment as he settled into bed, but as midnight approached, a creeping unease gripped him. The air grew colder again, and an oppressive silence filled the room. Suddenly, the room began to shudder once more. The walls dissolved into darkness, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic than ever. Mark found himself back in the void, but this time, Eleanor was not alone. The spirits of the previous guests surrounded him, their faces twisted in terror. "You thought you could break the curse?" Eleanor's voice echoed, now filled with malice. You have only made it stronger. The spirits closed in on Mark, their cold hands gripping him tightly. He realized too late that burying the locket had only deepened the curse, binding him to Eleanor's torment forever. The next morning, the hotel staff found room 713 empty once again. Detective Mark Harris had vanished without a trace. The Grand Arcadia Hotel continued to operate, but the legend of the vanishing room grew darker. More guests disappeared, and the whispers of betrayal and revenge echoed through the halls, a chilling reminder of the curse that could never be broken.